Can I ask you something? When was the last time you prayed inside your home? Not in a church, not before a meal out of habit, not a quick word before bed when you're already half asleep. I mean really prayed, sat down or maybe stood and just spoke. Inside the walls of wherever you live. I'm asking because most of us don't think much about what a home actually is. It's walls, it's furniture, it's the place where the dishes pile up and the week disappears. We walk in, we walk out, we sleep there, we argue there, we eat there. But Padre Pio saw something different. He saw what a home actually is, and more than that, he saw what happens to it the moment someone inside decides to pray. I want to start with something he said because it stayed with me in a way I wasn't expecting. Padre Pio once told a spiritual directee, someone who came to him confused, exhausted, feeling like God was far away. He told her, "The place where you pray becomes guarded, not blessed in a vague, decorative sense. Guarded, like something shifts in the invisible world around that space the moment a sincere prayer goes up." And when I first read that, I'll be honest, part of me thought, okay, that's a comforting thing to say to someone who's struggling. Maybe it's metaphorical, maybe it's just meant to give peace. But then you start going deeper into what Padre Pio actually witnessed throughout his life, and you realize he wasn't speaking in metaphors, he was reporting. There's something you have to understand about Padre Pio that makes all of this land differently. He saw things, not occasionally, constantly. The spiritual world was not hidden from him the way it's hidden from most of us. He would see the souls of people who had already passed. He would see the condition of a person's soul when they walked toward him for confession. He would see what surrounded people, what was following them, what was protecting them, what was absent. He lived with that visibility his entire life. So when he made observations about prayer, about what prayer actually does, he wasn't theorizing. He was describing what he saw with his own eyes, and what he saw around homes where people prayed was not subtle. There were accounts from people close to him, fellow friars, people who visited him regularly, of Padre Pio describing homes as having a kind of spiritual atmosphere. Not just a mood, not just a feeling, an actual presence or an actual absence. He spoke of homes where no one prayed as places that had a kind of openness. Not openness in a welcoming sense. Openness the way an unlocked door is open. Something that had no guardian, no covering. A space that was spiritually unattended. And he contrasted that with homes where prayer happened. Even imperfect prayer, even short prayer, even the prayer of one single person in a family. And the difference he described was stark. Those homes had what he called a presence of protection. Something that had been called there, something that stayed. He described it almost like the way light works. You light one candle in a dark room and the whole room changes. Not just the corner where the candle is, the whole room. That's what he said one sincere prayer does to a home. Now here's where it gets harder to sit with. Because Padre Pio didn't only talk about what prayer brings to a home. He also talked about what happens when prayer stops. There were people who came to him troubled, not by anything they could name, not by any obvious problem, just a heaviness, a restlessness in the house, children who couldn't sleep well, a sense that something was off, something they couldn't put words to. And in several of these cases, when Padre Pio looked at what was happening spiritually, the common thread was the same. At some point, prayer had stopped in that home, maybe gradually, maybe because life got busy, maybe because someone's faith had quietly cooled without them even noticing. And the protection that had been there, what he described as a guardian presence, had faded. Not because God abandoned the home, but because the invitation had stopped being made. That's the detail that struck me most. He framed it as an invitation. Prayer is not just something we do for ourselves. It is, in a very real sense, an act that invites something into a space. And when we stop inviting. I think about families right now, and I don't say this to make anyone feel guilty. I genuinely don't. But I think about how many households today have everything except that. Good people, loving people, tired people doing their best. And prayer has just drifted. It felt less urgent. There was always tomorrow. Padre Pio had a way of saying things that weren't meant to condemn. They were meant to wake something up. He would look at a person and say something that landed not like a wound, but like a hand on the shoulder. This is what I see. This is what's possible. Come back. And I think that's what this particular vision of his is really about. Not fear, not the idea that your home is in danger the moment you miss a prayer, but the invitation to understand what you actually have available to you, what is literally possible in the invisible world that exists alongside this one when you choose to pray where you live. There was a story, and this one I find quietly extraordinary, of a woman who came to Padre Pio deeply distressed about her son. Her son had left the faith. He was living a life she was terrified for. He was not open to conversation about it, and she asked Padre Pio what she could do. He didn't tell her to argue with him. He didn't tell her to send him articles or books. He told her to pray in the home, to continue praying in the home they shared, in the rooms he walked through, and to trust that prayer changes the atmosphere of a place in ways that are real, even if invisible. That a soul living inside walls where prayer happens is being touched by something, whether they're aware of it or not. She did. And years later, her son came back. Now, I'm not telling you that story as a formula. I'm not saying pray this way for this amount of time and watch what happens. That's not how any of this works, and Padre Pio never framed it that way. But what he consistently witnessed and consistently told people was that prayer in a home does something that outlasts the moment, something that stays in the walls, almost. I want to leave you with one last thing. Padre Pio was once asked by a man who felt his family was drifting what the single most important thing he could do was. And the answer surprised the man. He wasn't told to have a hard conversation. He wasn't told to go on a retreat or read a particular set of prayers. He was told, go home and pray there. That was it. Not because everything else is irrelevant, but because a home where prayer lives is a home where something invisible and powerful has been invited in. And Padre Pio knew, from everything he had seen across his entire life, that that invitation never goes unanswered. If this made you think about your own home, your own family, the prayers that maybe used to happen and stopped, that's not an accident. Sometimes something finds us at exactly the right moment. Thank you for being here. See you in the next one.